Hello, and welcome to Journeys Through Grief. I'm Emily Silva Hoekstra, and today I'm speaking with Kim Belverud, an award winning and published photographer who specializes in family, couples, and maternity photography. She has made the top 100 artists list multiple years with the National Association of Professional Child Photographers and has a Master of Photographer certification in family photography. She strives to capture candid, authentic moments during her sessions, and her hope is to bring more truth in her visual storytelling. She's passionate about taking time to feed creativity and is currently working on photography projects about adoption and motherhood. She's a military spouse, and when she's not capturing family connections with her camera, she spends time with her husband and three children in beautiful San Diego. I'm so grateful for Kim today, and I can't wait for you to hear her beautiful story.
Hi, Kim. Thank you so much for coming today and being so brave to share your story of grief.
Thanks, Emily. Good to be here.
So, I wanted to start off about your photography because you gave me this beautiful gift of capturing my grief, which I didn't realize was going to be a gift. Because when you approached me with the idea, I was terrified. I was feeling pretty upset and just kind of bloated from all the hormones and just not feeling my best self. And I trust you. So I thought that your idea was beautiful, but I just wanted to know what brought you to kind of change your photography, because you started out with family portraits and you've really evolved over time. So I'd love to hear your story around this project and your photography journey.
Yeah, definitely. So my business started in 2017, the fall of 2017, and I'd always loved photography. I wanted to capture families, and I was just sort of capturing families for their Christmas cards, everybody kind of looking at the camera, smiling, but I knew that wasn't where I wanted to be ultimately. If you then flash back 2 years before to 2015, that was a really big year for me. It started out first, my husband got deployed. He was gone, got deployed to Afghanistan and was gone for 9 months. My kids had just turned 4 and 2. And so it was a really hard time for us. And at the time, I mean, that was certainly grief. We were experiencing a loss. I didn't really think of it though as grief because he wasn't gone permanently. You know, it was just a temporary 9-month thing, but there were a lot of changes at home, a lot of adjustments. It was hard for me. It was hard for the kids. We didn't have any family or friends that were nearby at the time. So it was a really challenging, rough time. And then at the end of it, I wanted to sort of capture the fact that I made it. You know, I made it as a single mom for those 9 months. And I just wanted to really encompass like what we had been through, visually capture the bond that I had created with my children at that time. So I hired a photographer, and I told her, I said, I want the messy moments. I want just something truly raw and authentic about this relationship I have that I've created with my 2 children in the 9 months that my husband wasn't there. And it was a lot of playful moments that she captured, and the photos were beautiful, but they weren't, I was looking for something more, something deeper. And so I knew even back then, before I had even entertained the idea of becoming a professional photographer, that I wanted something that was more meaningful, something richer and deeper. I just didn't know how to get to it. So I think when I started my business in 2017, you know, I was just trying to learn. I was learning the aspects of the camera, what to shoot, how to shoot, different angles, helping clients get through the session. So it took a while. And then kind of as it evolved, I knew that it was time, it was time to bring more truth to the images. And so getting a chance to work with you and really digging deep and just kind of letting the barrier go. And I think the biggest thing was being vulnerable. And if I can establish a relationship and allow you to trust me, to say, it's okay, I can be vulnerable in this moment. Those are the images that are just so emotive. And those are the ones that make you feel something, and take you back and bring you to, just that moment. It just makes you feel something. So that's what I was hoping to do. And ultimately, as I keep doing it, as I keep building trust, as I keep pushing the boundaries and helping people feel more vulnerable in front of the camera, in front of me, then I'm going to be able to kind of get to where I want to be.
Well, I definitely think that you do a great job of that. And like I said to you in our previous conversations, I can feel that you understand depth. So it helps me to be vulnerable. And you mentioned grief around deployment, and it's something that I didn't even think of could be grief, but you went through a lot of grief that year. So can you tell me a little bit about that messiness that you wanted to capture and how grief maybe just changed the trajectory of your life even?
Yeah, my husband being gone for 9 months, from February to October, that was a big chunk of it. But then also starting in September, my dad started getting sick, and we didn't really know. There were some neurological issues and we didn't know what was happening. He and my mom were out in Florida. So, I'm 3,000 miles away, can't really do much from here, especially since I can't go anywhere since I have the 2 kids. And, they were trying to do tests, labs, everything to determine what it was. And he just kept getting progressively sicker. And then it wasn't looking good. So I had actually gone out there to visit him the week after Thanksgiving. And I spent some time there with him and my mom. And I left after being there for a week. And then a week later, then he died. And
So
I think, thank you. I think I still get emotional about it.
of course, yeah.
But I think losing a parent, it just really changes you, and I just really started questioning like everything, like, what am I doing? What am I doing my job? Like, is this fulfilling? Like, it's too short. What am I doing as a mother? Like, I have these children and I want them, what kind of life am I providing for them? And so it's just, I think it really starts to make you question a lot. And I think you start trying to reach, for something more meaningful, something deeper. And
yeah.
At that time, I was working in the software industry. I had been for a while, since I had graduated from college back in 2000. And I started getting restless and unsure if that's really, where I was meant to be. And then I started working with you as a coach. And I ultimately decided, no, this is not where I want to be. Like, I've done my time in software and I need something more. And photography was just kind of a voice in my head that was just getting louder and louder and was calling to me, like, this is what I need to be able to do. And it just was so fitting too, because photography is about documenting moments, small moments with your family. And that's what I was longing. I knew that I was never going to have another picture with my dad, and it was, so I was clinging on to all the photos of him and I when I was younger. And it was just 2015 was just a really pivotal time for me because of that. A lot of different grief, like I mentioned about the deployment, certainly that's one aspect, but the bigger one was certainly losing my dad.
I'm really sorry about your dad. I don't know what it's like to lose a parent, but we did talk about how grief brings people together in such strange ways, sometimes ways we don't even want to be brought together, but it definitely does. And I think the depth that you have in your soul because of this, can you tell me a little bit about how you feel you've been brought, or people have been brought into your life because of grief?
So at the time when I lost my dad, I had two very close friends from high school that had also lost a parent. There's this connection, like this, like for lack of a better word, club that you are now a part of, that, certainly you don't want to be a part of that club. You don't want to be a member at all, but there's a certain understanding, that of course other people who haven't lost a parent, they can, sympathize with that and how hard it would be, but they just don't truly understand. And I also had two coworkers, and they had also lost their mother. Being able to talk with them and email with them about their journey and, how hard and difficult it was for them, like it was just really helpful. I went through like a really angry phase. Like I was angry for a long time, and it just kind of consumes you in a way that's not just part of your daily living. I mean, I still had to go on. I still had to take care of the kids. I still had to work. Like I was still doing all the things, but there was just this layer of anger sitting on top of everything. And no one quite understands that unless you've been through that experience. Brene Brown has, that podcast, Unlocking Us, and she was talking to a grief expert, David Kessler. I don't know if you heard, or I think she mentioned it even in her book, about grief being unique. And I think she had compared it to like a fingerprint, as unique as a fingerprint, but that grief needs to be witnessed.
Yes.
And so being able to like have my grief there and people be able to get it, really connect and identify with it was just really comforting. And it's hard to describe, but yeah, it felt reassuring to me to have close people in my life that really understood what it was like.
I think the fingerprint and wanting to be witnessed, like we all want to be witnessed, whether we've gone through grief or not, but the fingerprint, it never goes away. It stays with us forever. And there's a fine balance of being witnessed and bleeding on the page or bleeding on social media that I'm going through all of this. And, this was years ago for you. And yet I still feel that through your work, this fingerprint that you have shows up because there is a certain depth to your photography. There's a certain depth to conversation with you. Tell me a little bit more about your certain fingerprint of grief and how it's kind of stayed with you, even though you've moved on with life and you're raising your family and your husband came back from deployment. And there are moments of joy, but we always carry this grief with us. How is that for you?
When I found out about my dad, I knew he was sick. I knew he wasn't doing well. And in fact, when I went to Florida to visit my parents and I left, I knew that was going to be the last time I would see him. I just knew he just wasn't doing well. But I was in denial about it. I just couldn't really face that. And then a week later, when I got the call from my mom, she was rushing to the hospital. She was rushing, and I just knew, that was going to be it. And like the memory of it is just so crystal clear. Like it was over 6 years ago now. And it's just everything about it is the details is just so clear. And I was upstairs, my husband's downstairs. We had a house phone at the time. He picked up And all I heard him say was, "I'm sorry." And I knew instantly what had happened. Like, I knew that he was gone, but I came flying down the stairs. I grabbed the phone and my mom said, "He's gone, he's gone." And then instantly, even though up until that point, I just knew that
Mm-hmm.
he was gonna be gone. It was like brand new news to me. Like, I just had never felt so much like grief all at once. And instantly I just fell to my knees, just sobbing so hard, saying, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" Um, and it just, at that instant, because I mean, I literally fell to my knees. It was like this huge, huge weight that just like fell on top of me. I still feel that weight, and it's the only thing I can say about how my grief was back then and how it is now is that then I was like very weak. Like, I had never experienced that kind of weight before. So, it just feels like a metaphor also that I just literally fell to my knees because the weight was just too heavy. And in that time, in that 6 year sense, I just feel like I've gotten a little bit stronger carrying that weight. Like, the weight is still there. It might not be as heavy, but I've just grown accustomed to it. I built up the muscles, if I'm going to draw the analogy to that. And I can just handle it better. But it's always like this kind of blanket of weight that's there. And some days, it feels lighter, like I can handle it. And then other days, I'll hear a song on the radio and immediately reminds me of my dad, and the weight's now very heavy. So it just comes and goes, how I'm able to handle it.
So having to let go of so many things in such a short amount of time and feeling the lightness of the weight periodically.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, what can you attribute to that? What has helped you get through grief? I mean, I know you had your low level of anger that stayed with you. Is it still your companion? Are you in a different phase of grief?
Yeah, I definitely think the phases have evolved. Definitely like that punch of initial denial, and then that real anger phase. And like I said, it stayed with me for quite some time. And I feel like feeling sad, going through that sadness phase, that little bit of kind of depression, and then coming to that acceptance. Like, I've definitely arrived there. And then it just kind of like sometimes rocks back, like, I know that grief is a lot of times compared to like ocean waves, and or like a roller coaster. Like, there's been so many good comparisons
Mm-hmm.
with grief, and I definitely can see it all. For me, it's just sort of like I'll like easily fall back into kind of anger phase, but I won't necessarily think, oh, this is tied to grief. Like, it's only really after the fact, like, okay, this was around my dad's birthday and I was really missing him. So it's not always apparent as it was, the first year out when you hit all those holidays. Well, this is Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
Christmas. These are the traditions that I would have had with him, his birthday, my parents' anniversary, all of that was very in my face that first year. And so now, being 6 years out, it's not so apparent, but it's still there.
You speak of resilience so beautifully. And I think the transition from software to photography, and even being able to come here today and speak about your journey with grief, is just a beautiful testament of your resilience. And I just want to know, what are some things that have helped you build this spirit of resilience?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because some days I don't feel resilient at all. So it's hard, but I think, of course, I get a lot of good support from family and friends. That's been a huge thing. And like we talked about, having that witness to your grief. So having the support that when I am feeling that moment of grief, that I can count on them to sort of lean on, that's been really helpful. Photography has also been helpful. I mean, there's a certain aspect, the creative aspect. I've always been a creative person. So photography, dance is something that I lean on very heavily also. Both of those creative avenues have really allowed me to cope and deal better through grief. I've danced through grief. I've danced while crying. One of my favorite dance instructors, teachers, his birthday is actually the same day as my dad's birthday. And it was just such a crazy coincidence that I found out. And it just felt too perfect, And so I take his classes, and he was doing a special class. It was for cancer support. They were raising money. It was in and was dedicating the dance to his parents. And so then I was just bawling while dancing the whole time. But it was just amazing because it just feels kind of to be able to move and stretch your body and do that while through grief is really cathartic. And then, like I said, the photography aspect, just the process alone is such good creative therapy. And then to be able to, get an image and be able to edit it and work with it. And then just know, like, this was part of that journey through grief. This was part of the process. And being able to work through that has been really huge towards staying resilient and getting through those rough times.
So with the self-portraiture in the rough moments, when you look at these pictures, how does that help you?
I feel like looking back at the images, they're stamps of time, right? It's just like that moment where, like I said, when I did that photo session of me and the kids when my husband was deployed, I can look back and know I made it. Like I did it. I was a single mom for 9 months. I had no other help outside our home, and I made it through. With the self-portraits, it's knowing that the struggle, right? The internal struggle of just making an effort, like trying to be creative, trying to think outside the box, trying to work through all the crazy chaos in my mind, just mixed feelings, just trying to work through that and put it out there. And then looking back at the images, it's like it's a stamp of I did it,
Did you do this during COVID? Because I know that a lot of mothers had a really rough time during COVID with the stay at home. And were you doing self-portraits during this time?
Yes. So I should have done more. I feel like I should have taken more at the time when everything was shutting down. My youngest was 6 weeks old.
Oh my
So
goodness.
having a newborn on top of homeschooling my older two, who were in 4th and 2nd grade at the time, it was just insanity. I mean, just absolute madness.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So and with a newborn, he wasn't sleeping through the night. I was getting up 2-3 times in the middle of the night.
Was your husband deployed?
Thankfully, no. Thankfully,
Okay, good.
he was at home, but he was still working outside the home. So I didn't have any help inside with the homeschooling and the newborn. But I got some really good self-portraits. I did ones with the kids, and they're like my most prized images because I knew what we had gone through to get to that point. And looking back at them, like it's such a sense of I don't know, it just brings all the emotions back. but the biggest thing is just that like fulfillment that I made it. We survived. Like, we had a really, really challenging, impossible time. And we may not have done it the best. Like, it may have been really super messy and awful. And there may have been a lot of tears, but we made it. And having something tangible, having that visual reminder, I think is everything, because then the next time you can look back and say, no, well, I did it then. So I've got this. Like, it just makes everything else feel easier, or you just feel more capable of being able to, no, I've got it. I've got this. I'm good.
I think that's one of the things that you've done for me with the portraits that you took, because I remember emailing you afterwards and just being like, oh my God, I can't look at these. I feel so gross. That was right after. This is about 6 months later, and I look at them and I'm like, exactly, like I made it. I mean, you made me, well, you didn't make me, but I do cry. I did cry during the session because it was just so powerful to be staring into Nate's eyes and being like, oh, what the hell did we just, what the hell just happened? And I think, yeah, I made it. And just looking back on that and saying, wow, I'm just so grateful for you for those portraits, because I didn't even think of self-portraiture during the time of grief, but you definitely captured my grief. And I just appreciate you. And I appreciate that you share your story with me today, because it's so powerful. It's so layered, deployment, losing a parent, COVID with a 6-week-old and 2 children in homeschool. Thank you, Kim, for showing up in the world the way that you do. As messy as life is, you are proof that we can embrace our messiness and still create something absolutely beautiful out of it. I have one final question for you.
Yep.
How do you think people can move forward with resilience when they're feeling at their worst? What is something that has helped you the most?
Well, this may feel cliche, but self-care. I mean, my husband was actually gone for the last 12 days, and there was just a lot going on. And I think what helped me was I took a dance class. I got a massage. I met with friends. Like, it was just really kind of taking that time, because otherwise I wouldn't have. Like, I just would have kept my head down, just trying to get through the day. And I think, if we can take time to know like what's going to help us, what's good for our soul, what's going to feed us, and we actually do it, I think that's going to really help. When my husband was gone, he was gone for 12 days in December. The kids broke me. I mean, I was just so broken at the end of it. And I was resentful. I was angry. And it was difficult for me to recover from that. And so I knew going into this 12-day period when he was gone that I needed to do something completely different. And so I think, that resilience is built when you can love yourself, care for yourself, and take the time to know this is what I need to do to fill my soul, fill my heart, and then actually do them.
Yeah. And then you can care for your family even better, because you're not, as long as we're taking care of ourselves, it's like the oxygen mask, right? You have to take care of yourself.
So true.
I'm so happy that you were able to find some self-care and that you shared your story of resilience. And I just know that your story is going to touch so many lives. And if somebody is interested in having their grief portrayed in film with pictures, is this something that they can contact you for? Because I really believe that it is transformational. I didn't think it was going to be when you told me about it, and I was pretty reluctant, but I'm very grateful that I went through with it. So is this something that you offer now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, those are actually my favorite sessions. And I think for those, I really want clients to reach out to me, and we'll have a Zoom call, we'll talk on the phone, whatever it is, but I need to establish some sort of relationship so that you have trust in me, because otherwise we'll get to the photo shoot and you'll sort of freeze up on me, and that vulnerability won't come out. But if you've heard my voice, if you've seen me, then that trust factor gets built and you're more willing to be vulnerable. And I love that. I had 3 sessions like that last year and I loved them. I mean, they gave so much more meaning for me as the creative artist, but I think it also was very meaningful to them. So I'd love to do that.
So if someone's interested in learning more about your photography, or even just looking at these sessions, where would you want me to have them go?
So the best place is just my website. It's just my name, kimbelverud.com. And there's a contact form and they can just reach out directly to me from there.
Well, I'm so appreciative. Again, I can just say how grateful I am throughout this whole entire call, but just really thank you so much, Kim, for the way that you show up and for helping us see that grief is messy. It doesn't go away, but we do learn to become strong through it. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Definitely. Thank you for having me.